Okay, today is Wednesday, March the 13th of 2024, and my name is Kyle Liston. I'm interviewing Russell Shaw today. We're at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA in Aurora, Colorado, and this is part of their Remembering Our Vets program. And I'd like to start by asking Russ here about your childhood. Can you tell me where you were born?
I was born in Fincastle, Ohio
Okay,
in 1932.
1932. And how many siblings did you have?
At that time, I had one older brother. His name was Homer Leslie Shaw.
Okay, that was my grandfather's name, was Homer.
Hmm.
And did you have other brothers and sisters after that?
I did. I had a sister born after me named Betty. And she walked to a church
Did she?
nearby and became a member of that Christian church.
Okay,
I never involved myself with the church
okay.
myself.
What about your parents? Did they take you to church when you were little?
That was part of our culture. We didn't devote a lot of time to that, but we lived on a farm.
Okay,
So we had, a couple of mules, couple of horses. We raised tobacco and other vegetables like oats and corn and tobacco. There was a time when tobacco became a matter of agricultural development.
yes.
And we participated in that.
So was that for cigars or cigarettes or chewing tobacco?
It was for all different forms.
Okay.
And in fact, as I tried to mimic a great pilot one time, so I started smoking a cigar.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about your childhood?
Well, it was really interesting living on a farm.
Yeah.
I learned to learn about animals, squirrels, rabbits, learned about snakes. Learned to ride a horse, a pony. Learned to take care of cattle. And one of my first jobs was taking care of 20 cattle.
Okay.
Cows.
Were they meat cows or milk cows?
They were milk cows. And that was when I first discovered I had an instinct. Because I went around barefooted on the farm most of the time.
Okay.
And the cow stepped on my bare foot.
Oh.
And I had a violent reaction.
I bet that hurt.
And knocked her out almost by hitting her in between the horns with a metal gate hinge.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I learned I had this thing called an instinct. So that was a revelation.
So what exactly was your instinct?
A reaction to pain.
Oh, okay. It's from the cow stepping on your foot.
From the cow stepping on my foot, my bare foot.
Hey guys, just a second. Okay. Russ, when you're answering Kyle's questions, can you
walk this
way? Yeah, yes. You're okay. the flag, me, whoever you feel like looking at back here.
And Kyle, also, if you also maybe point at the flag.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
all.
All right. Where did you go to school when you were little?
When I turned 6 years old, I went to a village nearby, Carmel, Carmel,
Okay.
Ohio, and entered school
Mm-hmm.
and met the teacher, can't remember his name right now, Mr. Anyway, he had a conversation with us.
Okay. Were you in a
Uh,
one-room schoolhouse?
No, it was maybe 2 or 3 rooms, but it was very basic and a place to meet and participate.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Carl Westfall was my teacher,
Okay.
and he asked us what we planned to do when we grew up.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know how to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
But a young boy named Leroy said he was going to be a boxer when he grew up. And
Mm-hmm.
and then Mr. Westfall kind of scoffed at him because he was pretty young
I
and
guess so.
skinny. And so Leroy responded to his disdain, you might say,
Mm-hmm.
by saying that well, I have boxing gloves, and
Did
I'll
you?
bring it to school tomorrow, and I'll show you, how I use it, how I learned
Okay.
to box. And so that's what happened in
Mm-hmm.
the following day, and Leroy and the doctor, the teacher squared off, and Leroy hit the teacher in the mouth
I guess he didn't get any A's
3 or
that
4
year.
times, 3 or 4 times,
Uh-huh.
and that was enough evidence that Leroy was seriously going to be a boxer.
Okay. That's quite a story. How did you like school?
That's about the only thing that stood out.
Okay.
It was like a learning experience.
Yeah. Did you have any favorite classes when you were in school?
I don't remember,
Okay.
but I had classes in mathematics and can't remember much about it now. I'm 92,
You are.
so those are only the big deal,
Yeah.
like, but what are you going to do with yourself when you grow up?
Yeah.
And I was going to be a poor farm boy because it was after World War I,
Right.
and we had a Great Depression in our financial circumstances because we'd spent a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
preparing for war.
Okay.
And
So you lived through the Great Depression.
I did. Actually, I learned a sense of shame because of the poverty that we were left with. But we had a farm,
Right.
so we could raise our vegetables and food and have milk from cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And we raised a garden.
Mm-hmm.
My mother did. Cynthia, my mother.
Mm-hmm.
There was a town nearby named Cynthiana, too.
Oh, after your mother.
Yes.
And
Yep.
did your mother can the vegetables that you grew?
Yes, and she also made a kind of storage
Mm-hmm.
where cabbages were turned into another form of cabbage
Uh-huh.
and stored
Like a pickle or
at
something?
night, in the winter,
Okay.
for the winter consumption.
Okay.
So we raised vegetables during the day in the summer, and in the winter we relied on those vegetables
Mm-hmm.
as our storage
Uh-huh.
and food supply.
Right. Well, it sounds like you may have been rich in terms of having a good food supply, and then poor in terms of the rest of the things that you might have had.
Well, we really, on the farm,
Right.
we really became reliant on ourselves for making and storing food, vegetables.
Yes.
And in the summertime, we had apples and grapes, and
Did you have corn?
we raised corn
Mm-hmm.
as our own food supply.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we raised corn for sale
Oh, okay.
to feed animals.
Okay. Did you sell the milk?
Yes, we had cows and horses, and they were part of how we raised food
Mm-hmm.
and took care of our winter needs.
Yes. What do you miss most about your childhood years? What do you miss the most about your childhood years?
What I missed the most,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, a sense of safety,
Uh-huh.
because we needed to be self-reliant, and after the war, we were economically without wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to learn to provide for ourselves.
Right. And when were you able to get through that sense of shame that you were talking about
Actually,
experiencing?
I never did. It was
You
like
didn't?
actually, when I joined the Air Force by volunteering,
Uh-huh.
I was left with a sense of shame from the poverty,
Mm-hmm.
the lack of cash, lack of a lot of money.
Right.
But after I enlisted in the Air Force, I was trained to be a communications technician.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I had become a technical sergeant
Okay.
and a communications technician in the Air Force. And
What year was it that you joined?
I joined in 49.
Okay. So that was during the Korean War era, wasn't it? Or just before?
49. I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm thinking that was probably just before the Korean War.
I think so.
Mm-hmm. So you were a volunteer.
I joined the Air Force in 49.
Okay.
And I don't remember when the Korean War happened.
I think it was just after, in the early 50s.
Yeah.
So you were a technical
Yes, I was a technical sergeant
sergeant.
by that time, and I'd been trained in the electromagnetic field at the
Okay.
core of the earth.
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was something I never forgot.
I bet.
Fact is, my whole sense of quality and power and equality was based on, I was one of the first people to learn that there was an electromagnetic field at the core of the earth. It's
That's
one of the
amazing.
things I never forgot.
That is amazing. So, do you know why you were collecting that data? Why they had you in that sort of a program?
Well, the Air Force operated on the practices of command, control, and communicate. So
Okay.
first thing I learned was how to communicate with other people in the service,
Okay.
because we were a united system of participation.
Okay.
And so we all learned how to communicate and share energy, share our observations and our practices that made us efficient and effective in our performance as a system of people. Dynamic system of people working together around the core idea of service and power and energy and knowing how to use it.
Right. So where were you stationed?
Oh, wow. Trying to remember the first place. Well, my first experience of belonging occurred with the training programs. Everybody, all of us were trained to perform. And as we were all trained in technical matters and training experiences, experiences of participating in a collaborative way that made the entire Air Force system succeed in its performance, and the use of aircraft and the use of all the technology.
Were you ever in New Mexico?
I don't remember. Let's see, where did I was in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Oh, you were?
For my communications training. And it was the first time I'd ever been in the South.
Okay.
So that was interesting. We were on the beach in Biloxi, and the water and the beach. It was like a playground when we were off duty.
That's great.
Or out of training. We could participate in the local neighborhood and learn about the people of the South.
Yeah, that's a very different place than Ohio, I'm sure.
Sure is. And that was the first time I met a beautiful woman.
Okay. I hope it's the one you married.
Well, no, we made some contact with each other, but when she was transferred from her school somewhere, we lost contact. She didn't write.
Oh.
And I didn't know where to write.
Okay.
So But it was a pleasant experience of recognizing the beauty of women and the possibilities of a future life.
Yeah. So.
Within my own family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I bet that was something.
That was. It's amazing
Mm-hmm.
how I responded from instinct
Mm-hmm.
and the empathy of connecting with a female person.
Uh-huh. And you're very well connected now, looks like.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So were you ever deployed when you were in the Air Force?
Deployed?
Deployed, sent to a base that was engaging in any warfare at all?
No, but my first assignment was in Alaska.
Oh, uh-huh.
At Elmendorf Air Force Base.
Okay.
And I operated a communication system remote from the base,
Uh-huh.
out in the mountains.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I had my first emotional breakdown.
Okay.
I got a letter from my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and she told me that my friend that I had as a child,
Uh-huh.
a boy named Neil Scott, Andrew, his family name was Scott.
Okay.
I played with him on our farms.
Uh-huh.
We rode horses and played cowboys and Indians.
Uh-huh.
And my mother let me know that he had been killed in Korea.
Oh, so that
And
was
then-
during the Korean War.
Then I recognized I had left him behind to go into the Air Force
Oh,
and never even thought about him
oh,
between then and now. And that's when I realized that I loved him.
mm-hmm.
I had loved being his friend and partner and playing.
Yes.
And I left him behind without realizing that I could have asked him to go with me.
Mm-hmm.
But he went into the Army after, or during the Korean War,
Mm-hmm.
and gotten himself killed.
Right.
And then I learned, upon reflection, my love for him and his friendship.
Yeah. I bet that was a really hard thing to go through.
It was. I actually had a violent reaction from my instinct.
Mm-hmm.
That's the second time I realized I had a quality called instinct. And it was like an outburst of violent energy,
Mm-hmm.
which just empowered me to move and attack what the source of my pain or my unhappiness was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also what I learned when I lost someone I loved.
Mm-hmm.
I could still feel some of it.
Yeah.
And then I read the great book,
Which is?
Book of Philosophy,
Okay.
by a great Spaniard named Jose Ortega y Gasset.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have that book?
I still have that book.
Uh-huh.
We found it again. I misplaced it
Uh-huh.
temporarily.
Okay.
Then when I got it back, I was happy.
Yeah.
But it's a book I've kept all my life
Uh-huh.
because it was really an education on being human
Mm-hmm.
and belonging
Mm-hmm.
with other people,
Yeah.
belonging in an enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
and learning to write about
Mm-hmm.
what I learned about being and belonging. Because I belonged first in the family, then in the Air Force, and then in an organization,
Mm-hmm.
one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had the experience of learning to command and lead
Mm-hmm.
a squadron of Air Force people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was prepared
Mm-hmm.
for the functions I was expected to perform,
Right.
and the organizational skills that I needed, and how we formed purpose in our taking on and performing given functions like leadership, communications, performance. And that was my life in the Air Force.
When did you first have a feeling of belonging somewhere or with certain people?
Well, as a student of military leadership and performance,
Mm-hmm.
how we organized.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I learned how that performance was created and maintained,
Mm-hmm.
I skipped a class.
Okay. In the Air Force?
In the Air Force.
Wow.
Regarding communications, one of my
Mm-hmm.
first training programs.
Okay.
And I was called to account for myself after
Mm-hmm.
that, missing a classroom.
Sure.
And so I was confronted by the first sergeant, who was the
Mm-hmm.
leaders of a first sergeant is the guy who's leading the sergeants and
Mm-hmm.
the performance.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, you have failed to perform your duty. And so we're going to hold you accountable for that, either through a formal punishment, like a record,
Okay.
like an accounting of what you did on a record, and that could be from the record in your records,
Mm-hmm.
or you can volunteer for 7 days kitchen police
Mm-hmm.
in the mess hall.
Yeah. So did you choose the KP duty?
I said, I'd love to do the KP duty.
Okay.
So I went down and spent 7 days in the kitchen
Mm-hmm.
on at our mess hall,
Mm-hmm.
and taking care of the dirty pots and pans.
Okay.
And I did so well, having this opportunity
Uh-huh.
to earn my freedom
Mm-hmm.
and respect back
Mm-hmm.
by my performance level.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I have a crime on my record, or I have a
Right.
mistake on my record.
You want to keep that record as clean
That's
as
right.
possible.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of that. After 7 days, I went back to school and participated in the classes and learned how to communicate Morse code,
Okay.
and voice communications,
Mm-hmm.
and also the Morse code communication system that we used in the military to communicate by wire
Mm-hmm.
or radio.
Right.
Uh,
In some ways, that was more sophisticated a system than what we have today with the internet, I think.
I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the beginning of technological communications,
It was.
the
Mhm.
radio and signals and verbally.
Right.
And relate to each other through
Mm-hmm.
command and control and communications.
Right. It sounds like you did very well in that area.
I did. I really learned from everything that happened
Mm-hmm.
how to conduct myself, how to perform well, and I went up to technical sergeant level,
Okay.
and then I was introduced to the possibility of being an officer.
Okay.
And I'll never forget what happened that day. There was a bunch of us, military guys. We were all in the same room,
Mm-hmm.
and they were inviting me to enter officer candidate school.
Uh-huh.
And they would suggest, why don't you do this? And I would say, well, I'm just a poor farm boy left over from World War I,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think I qualify. My refusing to volunteer was a function of, I don't think I'm qualified.
Okay.
And finally, someone yelled across the room, do it anyway.
Did you take their advice?
So that took away all of my reluctance
Okay.
or my excuses
Uh-huh.
for not entering into the field of level of performance of an officer and a gentleman.
Okay.
So I went to officer candidate and became a lieutenant.
Good for
Second
you.
lieutenant.
Good for you.
Thank you.
What was your highest rank when you were discharged?
I was a lieutenant colonel.
You were. So did you stay in the Air Force long enough to retire?
I did. I actually commanded 3 squadrons
Wow.
over 3 different periods before I was offered a final opportunity to take another command or another position like a staff officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think I've had enough.
Okay.
So I'm going to retire. So I refused a potential assignment
Okay.
and became a civilian again.
Mm-hmm. How was that transition back into civilian life?
That was made possible by while I was still in the military, in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
I was offered an opportunity to go to Syracuse University,
Mm-hmm.
to the Department of Arts and Sciences, and earn a degree in American history,
Okay.
American urban history.
Okay.
At Syracuse, and I spent my time there, and I also had earned from my assignments some beginning of languages, like Vietnamese and German from my assignments in those 2 countries.
Well, let me ask you this. What medals or awards did you receive while you were on active duty?
I think it was during the settlement of the Vietnam War
Mm-hmm.
in maybe 70s.
Uh-huh.
I was signed to Vietnam in 64. I think it was like 71 or so
Mm-hmm.
that I had an opportunity to go back and be a part of the settlement. And maybe even the breakdowns in conduct
Mm-hmm.
During the Vietnam War,
Right.
which created like a war crime,
Okay.
because we used, at least this is the story, that a chemical called Agent Orange
Right.
was used in the beginning and onslaught of our attempts to conquer the Vietnamese people and the Vietnam landscape
Right.
by using chemicals to destroy the foliage, the
Right.
earth.
So you had the DMZ, the demilitarized live
Yeah, so
zones.
we went back and people came out of that. In fact, here in Boulder, we have a wonderful restaurant called Chez Thuy.
Oh yeah,
Have you ever heard of it?
I've eaten there many times.
Wow.
It's a Vietnamese restaurant that's
Yes.
absolutely awesome.
And a mother and her child
Mm-hmm.
created that
Mm-hmm.
from their natural human skills. And it's an extraordinary expression of the quality of life that can be created
Mm-hmm.
in a country after a war.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible, God, it's,
Yeah.
I love the Vietnamese people. I learned to love people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I also learned to respect the Chinese who live by nature.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say that nature is their religion.
Really?
The Chinese people.
Yeah.
In the natural world.
A lot of Taoists and a lot of Buddhists. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have a lot of memories.
The
about
good, the
Vietnam.
bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. Definitely.
The good is quality.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of our capacities.
Yeah.
In terms of leadership, service, integrity, love for other people.
Yeah, I can see that expression of love in your eyes.
I have the book on love by Ortega at my home. I will never let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got tissues for you if you need.
Excuse me for a moment.
Sure. I have tissues that are more comfortable if you'd rather. Okay.
I
So tell me a bit more about your time in Vietnam.
Well, it was a time when in our lives there, I made friends with Americans who were there also, civilian people that helped work between the United States and Vietnam. And so one person said to me one day, her name was Rosalie Redmond, and she was part of the logistics team, I believe. And she said, you must be a legend in your own mind. I never thought about that, you know? But she said, all of us here, we watch you come and go and how you entertain yourself and take care of yourself. But it's always a mystery. Who you're going to sleep with tonight? So she said, you must be a legend in your own mind because we can't ever figure it out.
Yeah.
That was because I love people so much that it was part of my instinct. You know, I was, and of course I was kind of entertained by this idea of being a legend in my own mind. So, because I had learned to play certain roles in the Air Force when I was in the time of distress.
Right.
So one of them was learning how to play the Lone Ranger. You know?
So you were the Lone Ranger?
I learned from a comic book about the Lone Ranger that was published during that time. And I learned about how to be a secret agent on a secret mission in disputed territory. So those were skills that came along with being in the military and performing different functions, like spying, like research, like wisdom. So in a way, I kind of lived a mythical part of my life, which was a matter of spirit, you know, pretending. And it worked as well as if I'd been trained in it, because the purpose always led to the form of participation. So that's why I learned to be secretive and spy, learning to listen, you know.
Is that how you got
and discover.
Is that how you got through being in Vietnam?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually the drama of war provided that kind of adaptation, you might say. And it was all about what we need to learn by being on the alert and listening to help ourselves, save ourselves, reward ourselves in the worst possible conditions of warfare.
Right.
There's no days off in the warfare.
Right.
You follow me?
Yeah, 24/7. You have to be on high alert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My way or the highway.
Were you an officer by the time that the Vietnam War was?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I can't remember when. Oh, I was promoted. I became an officer, 1949. I think I was commissioned an officer in 49.
Okay. That was probably when you were around 17 years old?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Okay.
17 is when I enlisted in the Air Force.
Okay. So it was a little later than that.
I had at some point in time, I got a degree in history with Syracuse University.
Yeah. So how many years total did you spend in the Air Force?
From 1949 to 1976.
That's a long time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in fact, most of my life was consumed in the military service, where I was well trained
Right.
to respond to the demand of my skill set, communications technician, and then an officer, and then a leader, a commander, a staff officer, different assignments.
Right.
But I always had a 3016
What is a 3016?
skill code.
Oh, skill code. Okay.
All the functions had a number that expressed the code of our performance demands.
So was that your MOS?
Yes.
It was.
Military something code.
So, okay. So what medals or service ribbons did you receive when you were on active duty?
After the second time in Vietnam, I was given some kind of a award of superior performance because we were wrapping up the Vietnam War and we're exchanging citizens who were surviving Vietnam and coming to America to start their life over again. And it was called I can't remember the name of it. There's the Vietnam Association, the Vietnam Settlement Association, or something like that. It was a cadre of people who had worked there, had lived there, had performed in the war, and how we would settle the conflict and leave and clean up our act in terms of the maybe chemical warfare part of it. I don't know if that's ever been recognized as a mistake on our part, because we went through the pandemic that was created by China years after Vietnam, and the use of military forces against each other. As far as I could tell from my instinct, the pandemic of more recent time was an act of war.
The COVID
Yes.
pandemic, you feel like that?
COVID-19 and the pandemic, which was using biological weapons to impact our biological well-being in this country.
Right.
So it set a new state of war, you might say.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the instinct feelings that you have.
Well, it's a function of my senses
Uh-huh.
and the truth of my experience
Mm-hmm.
based on nature and natural responses, reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, all instinct is internal reactions.
Right.
It's
Your gut response.
a gut response, right?
Right. And tell me a little bit more about the breakdown that you said that you had when you received the letter from your mom about your best friend.
Oh, yes. Well, I was confronted with the fact that I had learned to love this young boy,
Mm-hmm.
and I named my last child a boy after
Good.
him.
Yeah.
And
So how many children do you have?
I have 5.
5. Wow.
5, that's a matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
because I may have fathered a child in Germany
Okay.
when I was there in, I think, 1968. And a beautiful German girl
Mm-hmm.
named Brigitte
Uh-huh.
Ran across my trail, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And I was struck by her beauty. I've always loved the beauty of the earth and the beauty of life and the beauty of flowers and art.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like instantly, she came walking by in Trier in a building with a big basement where it was kind of a playground.
Mm-hmm.
And as she came by in a green dress, I reached out and touched her arm,
Mm-hmm.
and she allowed it to continue,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a love affair
Mm-hmm.
without thought. I
Uh-huh.
think.
Yeah.
I've heard of prisoners of war, but I've also learned to be
Prisoner of
the
love.
prisoner of my instinct.
Okay.
That's the first time I've said that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel so ashamed of my social life
Okay.
when I talk about the love I've learned from playing
Mm-hmm.
and the love I played at golf,
Uh-huh.
tennis, racquetball,
Okay.
and something I never brought to the dance, like
Mm-hmm.
the Spanish dance.
Oh, okay.
Are you aware of the name of that?
There's salsa dancing, and then there's I'm trying to remember the name of the other tango.
The tango,
Yes.
where women are treated as equal partners
Right.
in a participatory system of dance
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying our physical life,
Mm-hmm.
enjoying our beauty and our harmony
Mm-hmm.
when we play together.
Yeah.
Instead of fight.
Right.
We don't need.
So after you went to school for the history degree,
Mhm.
what sort of occupation did you have?
Well, I went further and I got a degree in as a psychologist
Oh, you
at
did?
the University of the university in Greeley. I can't remember the name of
Okay.
it now. But that was my last formal education. But I became interested in the phenomenon of ontology, the study of being human, and what I learned in the wisdom area about being and belonging to a family, which I had missed out on in my early life because I became caught up in the fear of violence and the fear of my father and my disappointment with my father, because when I asked him where I came from when I was a couple years old, he kind of jokingly said, maybe you came from maybe you were dropped on a stump by an eagle, or dropped on a stump by a bird.
The stork theory was pretty popular back then, wasn't it?
I think it was, but
yeah.
He said you'd probably dropped on a stump by a crow flying over.
Okay.
So I became a part of the crows. In other words, like Americans, the Native Americans were Americans,
right?
Although they were claimed to be. The claim was they were from India.
Okay.
But they weren't.
Right.
It was just a navigational mistake based on Captain Cook's navigation.
It was.
Around the seas and around the land of the earth.
Right.
Actually, I'm glad that you've asked me these questions about this, because I have been writing on a book entitled Being and Belonging.
Okay.
In my experiences as a member of a family, as a member of the Air Forces, as a member of relationship, my friend Neil Scott, who I named my last child after, to try to defy gravity and bring him back to life after I left him behind, without thinking about the consequences.
Response, loading dock. Map response, loading dock. Map response, loading dock.
You guys are okay. We can just keep going from where you were.
Okay.
So you're writing a book?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your book?
Well, it's really, it's at the same time a history book and a study of the philosophy of ontology, which has to do with being a human being and how we respond and react and live by instinct as well as by creativity, art.
Okay.
Actually, in a conversation I've had with a grand old lady recently, I've come to the conclusion, and she said too, life is a work of art.
Right.
And she comes back and she says, life is a work of art. And we became friends. She's like 99.
Is she? Wow.
And speaks 3 or 4 languages, and has been a teacher and an author.
Wow.
And that's been the most friendly, most friend-based relationship I've had.
That's great.
With someone that age.
Do you consider yourself an artist?
Well, I can tell you this. The way I play sports is like an art.
Uh-huh.
I learned to dominate the court at racquetball and hit the ball everywhere somebody else isn't,
Uh-huh.
and I win
Okay.
because I control the center of the court.
Are you still playing racquetball?
No, I haven't played racquetball for, I can't remember how long.
Okay.
It's been some time.
Yeah.
But that's where I learned to excel through the practice of sports.
Mm-hmm.
So golf, I played golf and learned how to hit a hole in one,
Oh, good.
and that was enough.
Oh, so you had one hole in one.
I had one hole in one.
Okay. This is great. So, how do you ultimately feel that being in the military served you?
Well, I was trained in science in the military. I was trained in organization. I was trained in participation on the mass level, mass scale. Could you ask that question again?
Yeah. Just how did the being in the military affect you overall?
It made me wiser and older.
I think it was those birthdays that made you older.
Yes, time made me older.
So,
And according to the condition of time, life, the other side of life is infinity.
yes. Yeah. You must know a few Chinese characters or some Vietnamese characters.
I don't
okay.
know. I've never been able to make any sense of Chinese language.
Okay.
I've learned to appreciate the Spanish language, the French language.
Mm-hmm.
French created existentialism, which has to do with what's so,
Mm-hmm.
what's now,
Right.
what's how, what's why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything is a creative performance, or it's a way of participating and performing on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
With poetry, I've learned to write poetry as a sidelight to trying to understand how language can be used to enlighten, to inspire. I've learned how to be inspired by children.
Okay.
Babies again.
Okay. And I didn't really ask you this earlier because we kind of got into the topic of the service pretty quickly. But what was it that inspired you to join the military in the first place?
Well, I come to my childhood during the time in America that was experiencing the science of flight, and it was a transformation, really, from nature as inspiration to what's beyond the natural, and how it all fits together. So there was a kind of a theme. It was called the age of inspiration, the age of.
Matt team, all clear. Matt team, all clear.
So this was the age of exploration in space.
Okay.
And I This what we had the right stuff.
Okay.
We were told we had the right stuff.
So,
Our civilization was inspired by our capacity to live in a solar system and perform as a system rather than performing as a lone ranger pretending to be a cowboy.
so you were in during the years that Chuck Yeager flew
Yes,
all of his exploratory missions.
yes.
So did you follow that through your lifetime?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the opening, you might say, of the expansion of our understanding of life and circumstances and the organization of the universe and the field of engineering and building and creating.
So what made you choose the Air Force in lieu of other areas or other branches of the service?
Well, the right stuff was part of it, the culture of a time. And my father, when he didn't answer my questions, I stopped asking questions. And I decided to compete with him. Because he was in the army on the ground in France and Germany.
Okay.
And World War I, and I was aspiring to learn to fly an airplane and participate in the future. So I decided to just compete with him, and that's what I did. So and it was an ego thing, like it was about who's winning in the performance games, like sports. So I learned to perform in the master game of sports and life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
Did you ever fly an airplane?
No, I tried to. My commander let me drive it a couple times, but I never realized that I needed to let go of controlling the airplane and let it loose so it could perform the thrust it needed to become itself airborne as a form that passed through the atmosphere at the level of its thrust. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I don't know what else I can say about that.
Okay.
Actually, I learned a bad habit too.
Which was? From
being in the Air Force, where everything is very scientific and precise. I became egotistical.
Okay.
And there was a time when I left the Air Force. In fact, as I turned down the next job in the Air Force and retired and became in the field of science and technology. What I thought was a wiser person and a more expansively educated, I became arrogant also. And I wasn't a legend in my own mind.
Yeah, just meeting you here today.
Military as a performance. And it's been used to adventure. And it's been used to harm. We don't need any more warfare.
Right. So you're able to see both sides of the coin.
Yes, I can see I can balance
Mm-hmm.
the terror and the wonder of the other side of infinity.
Mm-hmm. So, in all your experience now, I know meeting you today, I don't see any arrogance or any ego. What has helped you to let that go?
Well, I learned my own limitations.
Mm-hmm.
I have a body,
Yes.
I have a spirit, I have a soul,
Mhm.
I have dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and I have limitations.
Mm-hmm.
All men dream, but not equally,
Right.
someone said. A British man
Mm-hmm.
who wrote The Revolt in the Desert
Mm.
in maybe the 18th century.
Okay.
All men dream, but not equally.
Mm-hmm.
Those who dream at night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake at day to find all was vanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting. So if I were
So my
to,
vanity has fed my ambitions, and
Mhm.
my ambitions have been performed according to my limitations as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So human beings can play or they can fight.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to play.
Yes. It's much better on that side. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are your goals in terms of looking into the future?
Right now, I have goals regarding democracy and our country,
Mm-hmm.
that our democracy becomes a way of life and we learn to work together. And I'm writing a book on my own experience of being and performing
Mm-hmm.
as a person for 92 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned to treat other human beings with respect,
Mm-hmm.
and myself with caution.
Okay.
Um,
What do you wish more people knew about the military service in general?
I wish that human beings had gained wisdom from their own performance, and how it is in our performance that we need to respect and honor each other and learn from each other
Mm-hmm.
how to create uh, a safety
Mm-hmm.
for each other. Like, if we all had a chance to talk equally,
Mm-hmm.
we could learn so much from each other that we wouldn't need to ever fight over
Yes.
a piece of land or blame anybody for our mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
To thank each other for the gifts
Mm-hmm.
that we give to each other.
Yeah. And what would you want for people to remember most about you in your lifetime from your own experience?
What I would like for them to know
Mm-hmm.
Could you ask that question again?
Yes. What would you like people to know or remember from your journey? I'll just ask this question.
I gave it everything I had.
Okay.
It's all right. It's all right.
And what message would you like to leave for future generations who will be seeing this interview? Maybe people like your grandchild.
Pay attention to each other.
Yes.
Listen to each other. Honor each other. Respect each other. Thank each other for the gifts.
Okay. And is there anything that you'd like to add to our interview today?
No, I have been blessed with partnership with my angel, who's taught me how to be a wiser man, and my grandsons and my sons.
How many grandchildren do you have?
I think about, wow. I have been so preoccupied by my own searching and discovering that I don't know a lot about. I haven't had a lot of experience with family. I would say honor the family. Honor yourself and your circumstances. Be the master of your own destiny. Be the master of your own destiny.
And if I would read your book in the future, will I get the answers to the existential question?
You will learn to understand your own performance and your own acceptance of other people.
And what can you tell me are the true gems that you have seen through this lifetime that you want other people to understand about you?
Okay. Do it anyway. Life is a gift of God, and our design is to anticipate and create the future of our being and of others.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, Russell.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
You're very welcome. I had a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.